Hi, welcome to Project Spark Alphabet. I'm Lady Lex UK, and today we are doing the letter E. And for my brain tile for today, I have chosen the East tile. We're also going to look at North, South and West while we're at it. And for my prop, we're going to have a look at the explosives. That's the barrel and the crate, because they've both got the same brain. So, let's start off with our tile. Now, here is our default player. And I've just plonked it down in the world, and this is the direction he will normally face. Just to prove it, let's go into a character, models, stick Astro Marine. There we go, he's facing this direction. If we was to plonk him down, there we go, he's facing that way. Now this direction happens to be south. All objects will face south when they're first created and put in the world. And that's quite handy to know. And just to prove it, we're going to test it, and there we go, he's facing the alien pod. Now we're going to change that in code. So I want him facing a different direction altogether. So we're going to use this once tile here, and we're going to change his forward vector. So positioning, directions, forward equals, positioning, world relative directions, and we're going to choose east. There we go. So we're now going to be facing east. And east is facing this red pillar. There we go. That's the east direction. So we'll change it now. We'll change it to north. And we're facing the blue pillar. And our final direction, west. And we're facing our asteroids. There we go. So, and just to prove that south is the pod. There we go, south, which is the default. Okay, so there we are. We have our four directions, and we can turn our player any way we like. Now, why would you do that when you can always do this? Well, you might want to change his direction within the game at some point. So it doesn't matter what way he's facing, you will turn him in a direction. You can do that using the once tile. But what is really handy is for creating objects. So let's create an object. We don't need that for him. Right, we're going to create an object. So we'll say create gallery picker. We're going to create an access terminal. And we're going to create it at the position of this logic cube here that's in this blue pillar. There we go. Now remember, you're going to need a once tile or child line to a once tile. Otherwise, you're going to create one of these every frame for 30 frames. So make sure you've got a once tile in there, because we only want the one. Okay, let's see what happens. Now, I put my logic cube slightly inside the pillar. And we're facing south. There we go. There's our access terminal, and it's nicely on the side of our pillar. And we can see the lock, and that's great. Okay, perfect. Now we've got another one here. We've got this red pillar, and that's exactly the same, and it's got a logic cube embedded in that one. So let's put our lock on that pillar instead. So we'll change the logic cube in world picker. We'll pick this logic cube and see what happens now. And oh dear, it hasn't actually done what we want. We want this to be inside, on the side of our pillar, so we can see the lock. And it's not done that. It's put it sideways on. That's because this object is obviously at a different angle. And our player is standing there like this, and it's created it over there, but at the angle of the way the player was facing. So that's what it's done. And that's no good for us. So how would you change that? Well, let's go into the brain. So we wanted to create this access terminal. We're going to create it as an object this time. So we're going to create an object variable. I've called it created. Call it whatever you like. and we'll just equals it there. So created equals create the access terminal. And we're going to change our created objects forward vector like we did. The same with the player. So directions forward equals back into positions, world relative. We're going to have it facing east. Okay. So now let's have a look at that, see how that works. And voila! We now have it side on, so it's up against the pillar. But we've got it with the hand sensor. Now, this popper's got two sides of it. One side's a hand sensor and one side is a lock. That's not what we want. We want the lock and not the hand sensor. So we're going to have to go back in again. And change this to west. And now we have it exactly how we wanted it. So it's facing the correct direction, and we can see the lock. And that's been created facing the correct direction that we want it to face. Now then, if you wanted it to face, southeast or southwest or what have you, let's just take out these created. We don't need those anymore. So let's turn our player a quarter way round on each side. So we're going to say forward equals, and we're going to go find positioning again. We're going to say east plus south. So now he's going to face southeast, which is between our east object, which is the pillar, and our south object, which is the pod. And you can do that for all of them. So I can have him facing east plus north. Okay, so there we go. He's facing that direction. East plus west. What will that do? Should face south, which he does. Let's try west plus south. He should face between the south and the west object. There we go. So he's facing at that angle. So that's how you do all of the obvious directions on the compass. Obviously you could turn the vector so you could have it a specific vector variables and have it a very specific angle. But anyway, that's the cardinal. That's what we're doing today. We're doing the cardinal compass directions of east, north, south and west. And that's how you change the orientation of a created object. Okay, now let's have a look at our barrels, our exploding barrels. Now I have 3 here, each with a different brain. This one is our default. This one is a detect zone, which will damage just the player. And this one is a timed explosive barrel. And over here we also have a crate, and we're going to do that in a minute. Right, so let's start with our first barrel. Now this is the default one. This is one you get as a matter of course, and this is going to explode. That's our other one exploding. This is one is going to explode when it is damaged. So if we hit it, it's going to explode. And all of those lovely acorns go flying as it explodes. This one is our detect one. And it's just damaged our player as we've come across it. And it hasn't affected the acorns. And we're going to have to restart in order to see our countdown one. As you see, it's the countdown that's playing above it. It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, I was far too close to it and it exploded on 0 and I got damaged. Okay, so let's have a look at the brains in each of those. So here is your default. When started to is dead, for each of objects detected, damage them 35, play a fire explosion and push it away from me with a strength of 10. Okay, so once this barrel has its health reduced to 0, it's going to damage anything within it and explode. And it will be destroyed because its health has got to 0. And if we look at the properties and combat and health and defenses of this object, it only has a health of 1. So one little tap and that will explode. Okay, this barrel here, it's the same code, except we're going to say when we detect the player, we'll damage it 35, we'll play the fire explosion, we'll push it away from me, that's the player, and we'll destroy the barrel. So it's not a matter of doing the health of that barrel. It really doesn't matter. Now if you want, so that the player can bash it, but it's done it on a detect, so it's going to explode before it gets a chance to bash it. But if you don't want anybody bashing it, then you need to change the health and defenses, make it invulnerable, immortal, and untackable. Destroy after death needs to be on, but there we go, that's fine. Do that, and then it's only when it detects the player that it will go off. But you can change it as you like. Now here is our timed one. So we're going to display our time above, so we're going to have a countdown going. Here is our countdown timer, countdown 10. Now in order to get this tile to work, which is the timer seconds remaining, we need to put an else tile in there. So we said our time variable equals the timer seconds remaining. And we're also going to set our time variable so it equals the ceiling of that number. So it's not a fraction, it's not 0.012 or 0.9 or 9.4 or anything like that. It's going to be the ceiling. So you're going to see the countdown go from 10 down to 0 and it explode at 0. So that's how we do that. And then otherwise it's the code we're familiar with. For each of detect, damage it, push it. But this is not a child line of that anymore. This is a child line of our countdown timer. And we're going to play the explosion. Well, we're going to play a sound of an explosion everywhere. So it's a big explosion. And then we're going to destroy the barrel. Okay. Now over here we've got our crate. Now I've done something special with this. What this is going to do is you can walk up to the crate and push it. So let's have a look what that looks like. We'll keep away from our barrels. Walk this way. I'll get over to our crate. So there's our crate. It's sitting there. And I've got a special move. So if I press the right trigger, he's going to poke the barrel and that barrel's going to fall off and explode. Excuse me. Right, so let's have a look at the code. Right, first of all, we've got some code in our player. So he does the poking. So we'll say, when the right trigger is pressed, we're going to emote the point forward. Now, it would be better if you created your own emote with a pushing motion, maybe with both hands. But as I haven't got my connected right now, it's going to have to be point forward. So I'm going to do point forward. And we'll set a boolean that says pushing equals true, and then we'll have this so that that boolean will be turned on and off. So pushing equals true, we're going to have a countdown timer of 1 second, and then pushing equals false, and that's it for the player. Then in our crate here, we're going to say when we detect the player, pushable equals true, and we're going to set my leader to be it, so the player. And when pushable is true, we're going to set the physics type to tumbling so that it can fall over. And when my leader is pushing, that remembers when you press that right trigger, we're going to have a countdown of 0.5. That just gives us a slight delay so that we can see the pushing emote. we're going to move in direction of my leader's forward vector. So whichever way he's facing and pointing, we're going to fall in that direction, move in that direction. And that's going to be a second, don't forget, because that pushing, that's going to be a second worth of movement. Because that pushing Boolean was turned off after a second. You can change the length of that if you want it to move in a slightly less violent way. It's up to you. When you start to bump the terrain, explode equals true. And when explode equals true, and you'll recognize this code, for each detect, damage, play the sound, explode, etc., etc. And that's it. So we've got a pushable crate, and you can drop that on goblins' heads and things like that, which will be fun. At the moment, it only does it when it drops and bumps the terrain, but you can have it so it's just bump. And I suggest if you're going to do that, you're going to have to do it after that countdown timer and it's moved. So let's try that. Otherwise, it's going to explode because it's touching that floor. Let's make sure that this is working. There we go, it exploded a little early, but there we are. Because it was bumping. So you'll have to fiddle about with that if you don't want it to just fall onto the ground and you want it to fall on people's heads. However, you have a detect zone in there. You can put a detect zone so it will damage anything that was within its range. So probably isn't necessary to worry about the bump. Just use bump terrain and that will do the job. Okay, well, thank you for watching. So today we've done the facing direction vectors and how to change the orientation of created props, and also how to amend and change your exploding barrels to do what you want. I hope that's useful to you, and as always, keep sparking.